Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to our Wednesday, March 4th Monday, March 4th School Board meeting. We will start with our agenda approval, deletions, additions. Dr. Veraco.
Thank you, Mrs. Seuss. You do have one revision, and that is Roman numeral 7B1, some additional personnel recommendations under Mrs. Castaneda's agenda.
Move to approve the revised agenda.
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin,
I'll second.
second by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there any correspondence this evening, Mrs. Kelly?
There is not, Mrs. Seuss.
All right, we'll run right into our liaison committee updates. Mr. Marshall.
Nothing to report this evening, thank you.
Mrs. Kelly.
I don't have anything for redevelopment. Cherville Parks, they are hiring for summer help. Great opportunities for our high school kids. And then also tons of programs are going up on the website for the summer for the little kids, the camps and whatnot. So everybody check into those. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Dr. Medlin.
I'll have more to report on wellness next meeting. Nothing else. Thanks.
Dr. Malco.
Hi, yes, Lake Central Education Foundation. We had a really nice turnout of grants submitted this turnaround, and I think it's because it can be for any item. It doesn't lock you into science or reading. So that's been a real positive for the organization. Still looking to hire somebody part-time to be an administrative assistant and to help with fundraising. If you know of anyone that would be interested in part-time work with a great group of volunteers, have them reach out to Louise Talent. And legislative, I think Larry has a summary that he will present soon. My question, and I'm not trying to be mean or catty, I'm trying to be a realistic educator. And when I read some of the things that are going on, I just sit back and I go, gosh, don't we have a Indiana State Board of Education anymore? Because it seems like a lot of those decisions that are being made by legislators should be something that's coming out of Department of Education. Back in the day when Sue Ellen Reed was down there, she was the one that would say, you will do this, and if you don't do this, then here's a repercussion. I just don't like the way it's headed. And with Dyer Parks, they're working very hard to update all of their parks so that they are at the very safe with new playground equipment in some of them, especially some handicapped areas. And that's all I have to share. Thank you.
And for my committees, the Redevelopment Commission, there's nothing to report. Construction Committee, we're meeting tomorrow morning. And Dollars for Scholars. We just held our Penny Wars back in January and February, and from all the elementary and middle schools, we raised $21,500. 100% of that will go back to our graduating 2024 seniors. Speaking of, those applications close March 10th, so make sure if you're a graduating senior, we'll give you a scholarship. Hit submit. So with that, our official school board business topics consent agenda. Dr. Veraco.
Thank you again, Mrs. Seuss. Seek board approval of the minutes from our executive session and regular board meetings on February 19th. Also seek approval of the claims, payroll, and extracurricular expenditures you received in your packets last week.
Move for improvement.
Motion by Dr. Malco. I will second that. Any discussion? Questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And we have no public comments regarding action items, so we'll move into our official school board business topics, regular agenda. Dr. Veraco.
Thank you once again. I want to give the board a legislative update on 3 items that are big news from last week. The first is Senate Bill 1. That's what they're calling literacy, and many educators are referring to as retention bill. It is in its final stages and appears headed to the governor's office. But I want to start with my summary to make sure the folks listening know that not just Lake Central, but educators across the state agree that mastering reading is a worthy top priority for students in grades K1, 2, and 3. So we do embrace identifying struggling readers. We embrace designing intentional interventions to shore up deficiencies, but we do not believe in Becky's words, that retention is an effective intervention. And so as we continue to ponder this, we have serious concerns with the black and white exceptions to this retention policy. We still are concerned about students who barely miss the cut score, even if it is more than once. We have concerns about students who have only been in our country for 24 months being expected to pass the test. I've spoken directly to ELL experts who tell you that the language acquisition, especially in the written word, takes longer than that. We are concerned about students who show significant progress from grade 2 exam to grade 3. We think that growth should be a consideration for promotion. We are concerned about students who did not attend kindergarten. We're concerned about students who may have suffered a traumatic life event leading up to the test. We're concerned about students who experience regular test anxiety. And we're concerned about students with above average grades who fail a test on one day and then are forced to repeat the entire third grade. The standard talking points from the bill's author, Senator Rogers, and many other elected officials, including Dr. Jenner, continues to be something needs to be done. Again, we agree something needs to be done. And we like the components of this legislation regarding the intentional interventions, like we're doing with utilizing the science of reading, tracking the interventions of the students we're supporting, administering the test in grade 2 to determine who needs extra support in grade 3. And we support the priority reimbursement for the science of reading summer instruction. So I just want everybody to know that there are many good points and good components to this legislation. But the good cause exemptions are currently very limited. We're going to continue to implore with our state leaders to also focus on prevention of reading deficits as well. This could be effectively done through mandatory schooling at age 5. It could also be done through significantly increasing the funding towards pre-K education. And maybe there's an assessment we can give students at age 4 to see that they really haven't learned letters yet. And so we need to get them started on some of those acquisitions. So most educators are looking for more reasonable exceptions for students because we do worry that parents of children who are close to passing are going to get angry if the current mandates stay as written. And so we're a year away from having to deal with it, but it is a concern, and we'll continue to work with our locally elected officials on that piece. Any questions before I move on?
I have a question. Based on the students as you recommend for summer school, Dr. Bracey, those students come to summer school or recommended for summer school because of looking at the data and you stat them or whatever you call that now, IAT, whatever they call it. That's how you get your list for summer school, is that right?
So let me clarify. I don't suggest anyone for summer school.
Right.
The principals work with their teachers to identify students who have to or should
Right.
attend summer school based on whether or not they passed iRead in March, based on how they're doing in the classroom, just a lot of different things, those in the IAT process. So I don't personally put anyone in summer school. That comes from the schools.
Right, I'm sorry, I didn't
No,
mean
you're
you
fine.
personally.
No,
I
you're
was
fine. I just wanted to make sure
collectively-
people know it's, I
Okay.
don't, yeah, I don't, yeah.
Right, so, and then, okay, I just want to make sure, and I thought you had a plan in place already.
For,
For the struggling student, you know, just.
we're working on
I mean,
it.
you don't ignore
No,
what's
we don't
going
ignore it
on.
at
I know
all.
you don't.
Mhm.
And I just want to just reiterate that that's really important and very much appreciated and.
And
Okay.
since you mentioned plan, that's what I believe the state should do. I understand the concern about children who cannot read by third grade. I'm not saying that's not an issue, but instead of retention, I do believe that we should have to have a plan for them. And this is what we're going to do to help them find success. Not every child is going to read by third grade, and that's just the reality of it. But we should have to have a plan for them, but not retention.
And let's face it, some will not ever be an effective
Some will
reader.
never.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think one thing that they forget about is the trauma that some students live in and day out, lack of food, shelter, parenting. And Larry, you had a good point with the preschool. I mean, that's really what's dragging us down because the research will say, what, ages 3 to 5, the brain is most active, and that's the time to get in there and teach them those things. So we're missing the boat. The boat is gone, and we're coming in now and go, oh, well, let's fix that hole in that boat. Well, no, no, no. It has to be preventive in design. I remember when this was a total big issue in the state, I thought, well, we had a Department of Education then, and they worked on that a lot, early childhood. Anyway, enough of me. Thank you. Appreciate that.
And kindergarten is not required. So I think there are
Absolutely.
things at the state level that have to be fixed before we can address other things.
Absolutely. You're right.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
I would just like to add, there's no point in a child's schooling where we're making a decision based on a single data point, and that's really what this is. In our world of special education, when we're evaluating a child to identify learning differences, we are looking at their cognitive functioning, their day-to-day performance in the classroom, their performance on standardized tests, parent input, their social and developmental history. There's a lot of factors that we're considering, and with this bill, we're looking at one assessment. And they will have multiple times to take that assessment, but it's still one piece of data. So like Dr. Bracey's talking about, being able to look at the student as a whole, and we should make a plan for them. And that was the statement I made this morning, that retention in and of itself is not an intervention.
Correct.
Giving a child more of the same thing.
Correct.
And just repeating more is not going to make a difference for students. We need to be documenting what we're doing, and we're fine with doing that. We do that already. But there's plenty of research to say retaining these students is going to increase their chance of dropping out and never finishing school. So we're working against ourselves if our goal is to make students academically successful. So it's really, and it will disproportionately affect certain populations, and those are the populations I work with. So it's extremely frustrating for me. But we'll continue to be vocal about it, and hope that we get a different outcome.
I also think it's ironic that the state wants us to focus on social emotional learning, but how do you think this will affect those kids who do not pass? You're going to retain them for 1 or possibly 2 years. That is social emotional damage right there.
Absolutely.
And I think the research also indicates that once a child loses interest in school because he's a failure, then he wants to quit school. And then once that happens, it's just the pipeline right to prison. And there's lots of research on that, too.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bracy, and Mrs. Gramala for those comments as well. Senate Bill 30, the stop arm violation, on April 25th of last year, 2023, the one-day All Indiana Schools report indicated for that day only, there were 2,091 stop arm violations documented in Indiana. Now, this is just a couple years after the family got wiped out over there by the person who was texting. And so there is motivation to make this stuff stop. Lake Central last year, 22-23 school year, experienced 350 stop arm violations. And many of us in the office, we scratch our heads because we think we've been driving for 44, 45 years. We've never once thought about driving around a school bus. But yet it appears that it's not taboo to a lot of people. Some members of the Indiana General Assembly are opposed to the use of cameras to quote-unquote bust individuals. They don't like the way Illinois uses cameras. This is per Representative Slager. He also shared with me a couple weeks ago that some of these violations have actually happened on the shoulder side of the road. So, the buses don't have cameras on that side, but that's the side that the kids come right off the bus. And so it is even worse. And fortunately for us, our elected officials, at least Representative Slager and Senator Niemeyer, are leading the charge down in Indianapolis to tighten up this bill. And so it would enforce the law against the owner of the car, and if the owner of the car wasn't driving, then they need to tell the authorities who was driving that vehicle. Since students, as I said, mentioned, have already been killed in Indiana and other states by drivers who ignore the stop arm, it seems like an easy bill to support. I'll admit that we have not taken the time to really go after our officials and say, you really need to do this, because it feels like a no-brainer to me. We're still hopeful that some combination of the legislation passes, and I'm thankful to our local officials who are trying to get that done. We appreciate their efforts in that area. But I just wanted you to catch an update on that, because the data, as we were talking about it and looked at it, was quite shocking.
Larry, when does is their final day this Friday?
This Friday is what I've heard. It will end. So there's going to be a lot of action in the next 3.5 days. My final piece is something we've talked about before, House Bill 1137. This is the release time for religious instruction. We've already, at our high school at least, worked to accommodate families who wanted to release students for up to 120 minutes per week for religious instruction. The law now requires us to make those accommodations. Some schools with a traditional 6-period day were having trouble making those accommodations because the students in general would miss academic time that they felt these sessions could easily take place on the weekend or in the evening or even at late afternoon for many schools. But that piece appears to be final. The piece that got added last week is the chaplains serving as counselors part, and that was added to this bill because it was defeated in the other bill, or allowed to die, excuse me. And so, you know, again, our feeling on the chaplains as counselors, if they have the proper credentials, we don't think it's a bad idea, but we would certainly want them to have training in child psychology and not just theology. And it's currently believed by some of the pieces I've read that most of them do not have that child psychology part. So we'll continue to follow that and other bills, and you know, hope for the best on some of the stuff that's still dangling.
All right, thank you. And
All right, I have one more item.
pardon me. Go
That's
right
okay.
ahead.
Just wanted to update the board because I have received a few phone calls recently about elementary boundary changes. People have caught wind, they're probably driven by Bivich and seen the great process that's taken place there, and Bill's going to talk about some of it a little bit later. But as the project gets closer to looking done, even though it looks more done than it is, we're getting some inquiries about, hey, who are you going to move there in the fall of 2025 when those classrooms are ready to go? And the questions are good ones, but they're not real easy to answer because it's hard to give specific answers without knowing the specific data of where the actual students are at that time. So it's about a year from now that we're going to use the then current data of where kids are to determine which neighborhoods move. Remember that one of our main objectives is to take the pressure off of Coling. Coling's out of space. We've got some of our specialists working out of small closets and sharing conference rooms where they used to share a classroom to do that extra support for students. And so the space that we've created at Bivich will come in very handy. The one neighborhood that I've told a couple of people looks like the easy one to move would be the Castlewood area, which if you look at our elementary boundary on our website, it's the only neighborhood south of 30 and Dyer that goes to Protzman. And so by moving that to Bivich, we take some pressure off Protzman. The students still go to their same middle school. That's what makes it an easy transfer, an easy change. Some of the changes, if we move from Coling to Bivich, they'll go to a different middle school, so it creates a little complication there. But again, we need to not only monitor the impact of moving students on the elementary schools, but the corresponding impact on when they go to a different middle school as well. I think at some point it's going to be important to have a public meeting to share with our community, especially those neighborhoods who are affected, which neighborhoods are being moved and how many students are being moved. And then if there's a neighborhood that didn't get moved, why didn't it get moved? So to share the methodology, if you will, with our public for those folks who are interested. There are some enclaves on the other side of the district that look like it could make sense too. We caught some flack when we initially placed Walden Clearing at Watson and Grimmer, because Coling and Clark were near capacity. And yeah, they're really close to Clark, so it would be beneficial to move them back if it doesn't create a different imbalance problem. So the whole thing we will take a look at. We'll report out to the public. As I mentioned to the board earlier, this is on the agenda because I've had some people hearing rumblings, and I just want them to know that, yeah, it's on our radar. We're studying it. We're just not ready to make any decisions till we have real data. But if people do have additional questions, they can feel free to reach out to me via email or via a phone call. Any questions from the board on that piece? Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to our Assistant Superintendent, Mrs. Castaneda.
Thank you. For my first item, I am seeking the board's approval for the revised copy of the personnel recommendations.
Motion to approve. Motion by Mrs. Kelly. Second by Dr. Malco. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And for my next item, I am seeking the board's approval for the professional leave requests.
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Malco.
Second.
Second by Mr. Marshall. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our Director of Primary Education, Dr. Bracy.
Yes, I'm just seeking approval for the professional leave request you have in your packets.
Move to approve the professional leave requests.
Motion by Dr. Medlin.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Second by Mr. Marshall. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
I do have a question, I'm sorry. So the virtual knowledge block, that is in alignment with science of reading?
Correct. Those are offered by the Reading League, and so we have several teachers going through their professional development sessions. And they all focus on the science of reading.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our Director of Secondary Education, Mrs. Schoeneman.
Thank you. For my first item, I'm seeking the board's approval on the professional leave request included in your board packet.
Move to approve.
Motion by Dr. Malco and a second by Mr. Marshall. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And for my second item, I'm seeking the board's approval for the field trip request also included in your board packet.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mrs. Kelly, and I will second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. And Mrs. Gramella has nothing this evening, so we'll move right to our Director of Facilities, Mr. Ledyard.
Thank you, Mrs. Seuss. I have several items tonight. A few of them need action. My first is just an update on the capital projects. As far as Bibbage goes, as Dr. Veracco said, we're making great progress down there. On last Thursday and Friday, I had all the inspections for the 4-classroom addition from the town of Dyer. That included the town as well as the fire department, and we did receive the partial occupancy permit as of Friday afternoon. So we are able to occupy that building. Our rooftop units did come in last Wednesday as well. So I'm letting the teachers kind of move a little bit of stuff in there this week, but we're tying in the rooftop units and all the stuff above the ceiling. We'll have that done by Friday. And we're going to wax the floors on Saturday, and then next week on Tuesday, with being an early dismissal day, we're moving classrooms 1 through 4 from the existing building in the afternoon after dismissal. Bill's Movers, I've worked with them. They're going to come out at 12:30 and move everything. I've talked to Rick. He's moving the technology that morning. So on the 13th, we're going to have those teachers in the existing classrooms 1 through 4 be teaching in the new classrooms on Wednesday the 13th. So that's way ahead of schedule with that. So that's going to allow us to take those rooms over spring break, and we can get ahead there because by 2 and 3, that's where the new bathrooms are, and that's where it's connected to the 10-classroom addition. The 10-classroom addition is right behind. We're just finishing up some final painting. We're finishing up the metal panels on the outside, again with the RTUs, so we'll be done with that. The classrooms themselves, the 10 classrooms, probably by the end of the month, but then we won't occupy those because of the connection to the building and everything else. I mentioned over spring break, we'll not only be taking those 4 classrooms, we'll also be taking the cafeteria. I met with Allison and Ashley's staff and along with Debbie from Food Services. We've got a game plan in. We're gonna be, the cafeteria's gonna be closed the last 9 weeks of school. We'll be eating in classrooms like we did during the COVID year. Deanne and Debbie from food service have done a great job with expanded menus. They've got a pretty slick system, so it's going to go pretty smoothly, I hope, there, because we have a lot of work to do in the kitchen and the cafeteria. We're adding a serving line to accommodate the extra students, and we're expanding the kitchen. So there's going to be a lot of work to be done by August. And we've also been able to do some stuff in the mezzanine, which is ahead of schedule as well for the existing building, the HVAC renovation there. So everything there is going pretty well. Before I go on, any other questions on Bibbage?
I had shared with the other board members before you arrived that I really enjoyed the tour, and it's looking very sharp over there, so nice
Thank you.
job.
Thank you.
I wish you good luck in moving 4 classrooms
Oh,
Tuesday
they'll-
afternoon.
It will be done before dinner. Yeah, no, these guys know what they're doing, yeah.
I believe it, it's just a big task.
Yeah. And the teachers have been great, so.
Good.
On the freshman center, we've been, with Aaron and Richard's cooperation, and we've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and we've been able to do a lot of things that we weren't counting on. We've got 6 air handlers set and working. We'll have 2 more set and working by spring break. And over spring break, all the equipment you see out here will be put on the roof over spring break. I informed my colleagues at central office this morning, and I've also let Richard and Aaron know, Tuesday through Thursday over spring break, we'll have 2 cranes on site. One will be in the freshman center, so we're gonna close this south road during business hours. You'll have to enter central office through door B or C, because we're gonna have 2 huge cranes here. And by end of spring break, we'll have all this stuff on the roof. So that's going well as well. Last but not least, knocked on wood, but Grimmer, got an email today, my missing air handler of 22 months is shipping Thursday and be here next Wednesday. So we're hoping that stays true, and if that's the case, we'll swap everything out over spring break and wrap all that up over spring break. Any questions?
So where are they shipping that from, do you know?
It's from Train. I think it's from out east somewhere. It's been changed like 6 different times, so. My next item is to seek your approval to award and execute change order number GC01-006 to Circle R Mechanical for the amount of $13,204.82. This is some items during the final punch list that we did, other than the missing AHU 13. We found some equipment, the old existing equipment, as far as a VAV, some coils that need replaced. So we're going to do that here over spring break when we put the final unit in.
Move to award and execute change order GC 01006.
Motion by Dr. Medlin,
I'll second.
second Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. My next 4 items involve the furniture for Bibbage, and before I seek your approval on these items, just a little brief explanation, and also a thank you to Allison, Ashley, as well as Becky, who spent several days and hours with me going over the furniture needs for Bibbage. And what we did, when Rob and I put together the budget and everything, we tried to have a budget to replace a lot of the furniture in the existing building as well, because I've been told by numerous teachers and some of the principals over there, it's older than I am, which I know is not true, but it's kind of old. So we did try to do that. So that's why we broke it down when I had the people bid it. We bid the new furniture for we had 15 classrooms, the 14 new ones, plus we considered the existing room 1, because there's a lot of remodeling in there. It's kind of with the others. So that's the 15, then we had 22 existing additional classrooms. So fortunately, we went through the co-op, it's Omnia, similar to what we did with Sourcewell with the high school softball and baseball lights. It's approved co-op, most of the public schools in the area in it. So all these prices are approved with them, so we got to go right through that, which also helped us with our pricing. So basically I've got 4 things here. We did basically what VS America is with the co-op, and they're doing all of our classroom chairs, classroom tables, some of these hokey stools, also some tables, those type of things. The stuff from Sharp is the non-VS stuff. That's basically teacher desks, teacher chairs, file cabinets, mail slots, as well as some equipment, kindergarten rugs, and some equipment Becky's rooms need for special ed equipment. So we are fortunate enough to fit in our budget to do all the rooms, so that's why I'm bringing you all 4 of these items. So before I ask any questions on the furniture, before I ask your approval on the items.
So,
Was that-
Mr. Ledyard, am I understanding right that number 3 on our agenda is for the new rooms, and number 5 is for all the existing classrooms?
I'll go over it when I ask,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay, with that, number 3, as Dr. Malkow said, is basically the VS furniture, and that's all the classroom chairs, classroom desk. I will say too, once we got down to everything with Allison and Ashley and Becky, we brought samples in, and the furniture they're gonna have at Bibbage is it's not as old as I am, it's much newer. It's gonna be basically all about mobility and collaboration. These desks are very mobile. They can put anywhere from 2 to 8 people in a group. They can move them around. They're gonna have a little tote in them, and then they have these tote carts, where instead of back in our days, where you had all your books underneath, these now have tote carts. Each kid's gonna have a tote. The cart's gonna be mobile. The teachers are extremely excited about it, so much so that I had to change the bid because the kindergarten teachers loved the mobility and collaboration so much, they went away from the old kidney tables and tables. They went with these as well. So it's gonna be a new look furniture, but they're very excited a bit about it, both Allison, Ashley, and the teachers. So with that, the first one's VS for all the chairs, desks, tables, tote carts, and that's for VS America, and that's for $204,921.20.
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Malco,
I'll second.
second Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. My next one is for the 15 new rooms as well from Sharp, the non-classroom furniture, the teacher desks, teacher chairs, easels, kindergarten rugs, file cabinets, and that's for $61,577.
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Malco, and I will second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. My fifth one is to award and execute the contract to VS America for the classroom furniture for the existing rooms. These are the 22 existing rooms at Bibbage, and again, these are the classroom desks, classroom chairs, tote carts, et cetera. And this is for $338,660.80.
So moved.
And we have a motion by Dr. Malco and
Second.
second by Dr. Medlin. Any discussion?
So, Mr. Ledyard, is this the one that will give all the remaining classrooms new furniture?
Yes.
Very nice, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Last is to award and execute the contract to Sharp Schools for the classroom furniture for the existing rooms as well, the teacher desks, teacher chairs, filing cabinets, kindergarten rugs, mail slots, those items again, and that's for $96,581 even.
Move to approve?
Motion by Mrs. Kelly,
Second?
second by Mr. Marshall. Discussion?
Is that for all the classrooms also?
That's for the remaining classrooms.
Wow, very nice. I bet they are very excited for this new
They are.
furniture. Oh, wow. Very good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And I will say, Rob and I are excited because it was within $3,000 of my budget for all this stuff. So that's pretty good with a number like this, so.
Well, it's amazing to me that you have been able to be so broad with sharing this furniture and this equipment, because usually that doesn't happen. So good management there, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Our Director of Business Services, Mr. James.
Thank you. My first item is to seek your approval for the donations that were in your board packet.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Marshall,
Second.
second by Dr. Malco. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. My next item is to seek your approval for the extracurricular purchase at Kaler that was included in your board packet.
Move to approve?
Motion by Mrs. Kelly,
Second.
second by Dr. Medlin. Questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And my final item is just to give the board an update on our spring ADM count. As you know, it's just as important as the fall count because it dictates the revenue that we're going to get for the second half of the year. And in your board packet, I have a comparison of what our fall count numbers were on October 1st as compared to the beginning of September. And district-wide, we are down 120 students across the district. And in your packet, I've kind of detailed of why we are down 126 kids. From October 1 through through February, we had approximately 103 new students, new enrollments into the district, but we had 229 students leave for a net reduction of 126. So working with our data department and technology, wanted to see what happened with those 229 kids. And in your packet, I've got a breakdown that shows of those amounts, 62 of them were mid-year graduates, GEDs obtained at the high school. About 116 students moved either to another school district in the state or moved out of state. So those 116 moving out and 103 moving in, not that much of a difference there. We had 14 students who withdrew to be homeschooled, 19 withdrew to do online schooling, 11 just end up just straight up dropping out. We had a few expulsions, and then 2 removed for residency. So it's not necessarily people, the move-ins, moves out were pretty steady. And again, we had about 33 who've chosen to do some other educational route of homeschooled or being online. So just want to give the board an update on that.
Rob, did you say, I'm sorry to interrupt, did you say residency too?
Yeah, 2. So, any questions? All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. And we do not have any public comments, so we'll move into our board comments and consideration of future agenda items. Mr. Marshall.
I just want to reemphasize in discussions this evening about reading being very important. In my mind, it is at the top of the list, jointly with some other requirements, obviously, but to support the reading through interventions and additional approaches, I think it's just essential. And we cannot leave out the support of the family. And I'm talking about parents, older siblings, whatever. I've been fortunate enough to have my wife, a former teacher of second grade students, carry that forward with our grandchildren. And I can see it. It absolutely requires parents to make that extra effort. I know we all lead busy lives and you haven't got the time, but help our school systems out. I think it's, without question, essential. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Kelly?
No comment this evening.
Dr. Medlin?
I just want to say I had the pleasure of seeing SpongeBob SquarePants this weekend at the Lake Central Theater Company, and it was really excellent. Thank you.
Dr. Malco?
Yes, it was a very cute show. And I was able to visit Mr. Augustus's math classroom the other day at Clark. And it was very exciting. I mean, you could be in that room and think, oh, it's chaos, but it's not chaos. It's that organized chaos, and that's when students learn because they're active learners. And it just extends all that active teaching and learning that we do in the primary grades, just extends it up to the middle school. And he said there were other people interested and that it sounds like it's going to take on and develop. And it made me think about the CRIS training. And does Mr. Miller still do CRIS training?
He does. He does do CRIS training. We've been in contact.
Good for you. I think he's a real dynamo, so that would be great. Did you get that letter I sent to you? No, I didn't. Never mind. Never mind. Okay, I just want to make sure. Chris would be good. And if he's not willing to do it, I think Louise Talon is a trainer also.
Yeah, Mr. Miller and I, we did speak, and I think he's not doing it as actively, but for us, he will do it. And I know he's been doing some work with Crown Point as well. So, yes.
All right, and I have nothing this evening, so we'll move right to Dr. Varacco for board calendar future activities.
Yeah, our next meeting is Monday, March 18th, probably in this room.
All
Thanks.
right. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
And I will second that. We're adjourned.
We're adjourned.